Are you ready to untangle from your past, recover from heartbreak, and revive your life? This is Soul CPR with your host, Ann Papayoti. We've all had soul-crushing experiences and lost ourselves in our pain, but there is a way out. On this podcast, Amazon best-selling author, award-winning life coach, and advice columnist Ann Papayoti helps us navigate the path from heartbreak to healing. So now, please welcome the host of Soul CPR, Ann Papayoti.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining me today for today's show. I'm really excited. I've got a very special guest, but in just thinking about all of you, I know many of you are dealing with a lot of weather events and trying to go back to school, and it's no different here at my household. And those of you who've been following the show know that my son, Chris, has been serving as my intern this summer while he is now back at school. So I know you all join me in wishing him a happy and healthy and, let's say, productive school year, free from all the anxieties and fears of some of those show topics that we talked about here that he did the research for, and shared that he dealt with or struggled with some of those issues in his life. So thank you in joining me and wishing him the best in this school year. So moving on into today's show. I am just really, I use the words awe-inspired in the show description because I know that you will be as well by my guess. Pastor Charles Eduardos joins me today, and he certainly has an unexpected path from justice to Jesus. And I'm not going to give it all away in the introduction because you're going to understand what I mean as we share his story throughout today's show. But know that this gentleman is a native of Cleveland, Ohio, and he is currently the pastor of All Saints Lutheran Church in Olmsted Falls. I hope I said that properly. And he serves on many other community committees and organizations, and I'm sure we'll get to mention some of those in just a moment, but I don't want to delay bringing him on. So welcome to the show. I'm going to call you Charles because that's how I know you. Is that okay?
Absolutely. And that's what I tell people. They say, well, what should we call you? Reverend, pastor? I'm like, my name is Charles. Let's dispense with all the formalities.
Wonderful. Well, let's go with that. Well, let's start about how we do know each other as Charles and Ann. And we met as expert contributors to Your Tango, which is a digital magazine whose tagline is opening hearts and building relationships. And it's kind of still what you do in a different way. But the content is primarily relationships, love, expert advice, opinions, insights on those kind of topics, as well as emotionalness and self-empowerment. And we had these Thursday, I called them mastermind meetings, although they've had different names throughout the years, where the contributors that they called us were all therapists and coaches. And you and I both had coaching backgrounds. You're an executive coach. We both had NLP backgrounds. You even have certifications in hypnotherapy, which I find fascinating, and we'll have to talk offline more about that. But we would have these meetings on Thursdays and learn from one another and share. And what I know is that there were a couple of people that when they spoke, I perked up, and you were one of those. And I believe I shared that with you when we had to spend some time away and just to know others separately. But I always listened when you spoke, and you were very thoughtful, and you weren't one of those who just talked about anything to say something. You really were thoughtful. And I think this goes to lay a foundation for not only what you do now, but how your career started. And there's many layers to you and the careers before we met. So I'd like to start with that. Your first career, age of 16. Tell us about that, Charles.
Well, my first career, and I'll go back before the one I think you're thinking about. I was a paper boy at 8 years old. But
no, I didn't know that one.
Yeah. But I started in radio broadcasting on my 16th birthday here in Cleveland at a radio station. WABQ was the call sign, and they are no longer. But it was a R&B station, played a lot of Motown and Philly sound stuff, the Temptations and the Delphonics and all that. So that's where I began, and while I was still in high school. So I went from being kind of the fly on the wall, unnoticed person to instant celebrity in high school when I went on the radio.
That's amazing. And I didn't Billboard magazine like do a feature story on you being this youngest DJ in such a major market
Yeah,
like Cleveland? Yeah.
yeah, they did. Because I kept hearing from people, oh, you can't expect, you're not going to start in a major market. Cleveland is a major market. You're going to have to go to like Chicken Switch, Alabama or something to get started. And I actually thought, I looked up Chicken Switch, Alabama, and there's actually a town, Chicken Switch, Alabama. So, but I thought it was just, but basically they were saying, you got to go to a small market and work your way in. Um, but I was privileged, blessed to encounter the program director of the radio station at that time. I met him actually at my cousin's health studio. My cousin Shelby Kellogg, who is uncle to the Indiana Pacers Clark Kellogg. Um,
Oh,
but Shelby had a health studio, and Shelby had won the Mr. Universe, second place in the Mr. Universe contest. He was bodybuilder, big dude. And Ed was impressed with my voice, my diction, and uh, approached my mother to see if he could take me under his wing and mentor me. He thought I had a great future in broadcasting. So that's how it all began, just connections and relationships.
connections and relationships. There you go.
Yep.
And from there, and here you are, literally a teen celebrity in your hometown, and your life's going well, and then fate intervened in an unfortunate way. Can you share with the
Yeah.
audience what led to that and what happened?
Well, I went from Cleveland to Memphis, Tennessee, and was working there, and from there to Charlotte, North Carolina, where I ended up doing radio and television. I was kind of doing um, a local version of, I guess, Soul Train. And anyway, I met a young lady through a friend of mine, one of the record promoters. And long story short, her ex-husband didn't like the fact that she had found a new boyfriend and everything, and apparently had been stalking us and found out where I lived. And it was New Year's Eve, 1971, coming in. He showed up at my doorstep. I lived in a really nice townhouse apartment out by the airport on West Boulevard in Charlotte. And so the knock came on the door. I just went. I didn't look through the peephole or anything, just opened the door. And there he was with a Thompson submachine gun and shoved it in my mouth. And one round went off. And my dimple over here, that's not from being cute or anything. That's where they took bone and bullet fragment out of my cheek. And my jaw was shattered from the center all the way back. Thank God the joint was still intact. So my jaw was um, wired shut for 18 months. And you want me to tell them about the incident during the operation?
Yeah, we're
That,
going to get there because, but your life really changed at the speed of a bullet, just like
yeah,
that.
it
So
did.
your
It
your
did.
your career, if your mouth was wired for 18 months, you were no longer able to do radio, I take it,
Yeah, I
and the
was.
television.
It ended my career. I obviously couldn't work for a while. And honestly, Anne, and I didn't tell you about this, but I became very suicidal. I just felt like my life was over.
Mhm.
Um, but and as I tell folks, I wasn't called to ministry. I was bushwhacked, and this was the incident where I was bushwhacked, and kind of got back on the track of my early years growing up. My family thought I was going to be the priest of the family. I grew up Roman Catholic, but it was a devastating experience because my life was over as I understood it.
As you understood it. Yeah. So let's go from this horrible incident to hospital. And
Mm.
yeah, please share that this
Uh,
experience that really was pivotal for you as well. This next experience.
well, when I got shot, I never lost consciousness. And rode to the hospital. I remember the ride to the hospital in the ambulance and everything. And in the emergency room, the doctor, and I never will forget his name, Ellison Edwards, he told me, he says, well, we're going to have to cut a trach. And as soon as we cut the trach, we're going to put you out. He says, I know you got to be in a lot of pain. I remember him. I felt the pressure of the blade when they cut the trach, and then I was out. Um, the next thing I remembered was it turned out I didn't know where I was, but I was watching them operate on me. It was like I was looking down over the operating room, and um, it, I kind of knew this is it. I'm gone. Um, and I thought about my mom. My mom was going through a really difficult time. I'm my mother's firstborn child, my father's only child. Mom remarried, and I have half siblings, although we always called ourselves just brother and sister and whatnot. But I remember thinking, oh my God, I can't do this to mom. As I was feeling drawn to this light that I can't even describe. It was the brightest light I've ever seen in my life, but it didn't hurt my eyes. And I felt just such a profound peace. But here again, just thinking about what this is going to devastate mom, this would kill her, you know. And then the next thing I consciously remember was waking up in the recovery room and Dr. Ellison Edwards standing over me, and he said to me, he says, "Well, you're stable now. We lost you there for a bit, but you're stable. You're going to be fine. Um, the bad news may be I can't guarantee that you're ever going to be able to make sound again." Because again, which made sense. The barrel of the rifle was literally in my mouth. Um, but before I left the hospital there in Charlotte, I was able to utter sound again, and that was just the first of what turned out to be 6 operations to put me back together again.
Wow. First of all, I can imagine what a horrifying experience it was to encounter this man and his gun and then go through the trauma. But what a beautiful experience that you're able to share with us about the experience you had and really out of body a death experience,
Yeah,
the doctor confirming that they lost you, and you can remember and share what you saw and what you were thinking, and to have that connection and to be motivated for your to survive for your mom is such a beautiful expression of love. But to know that you felt peace, and we
yeah,
often hear about seeing the light, but to have someone actually tell the rest of us that's exactly what it is, and that it's peaceful and it's comforting and beautiful. So thank you so much for sharing that very personal part of your journey with our audience because it's very special. Um, it is time for our first break. And when we come back, we're going to pick up from there because you said earlier you weren't led into the ministry, you were bushwhacked into the ministry. And so I'd love to hear what happened from this point. But I believe first it was that loss of career and feeling suicidal before you get. So again, it wasn't a straight line. So we'll come back with more from my friend Charles and Soul CPR. Don't go far.
Mike Zorich, a three-time California state champion in Greco-Roman wrestling at 114 pounds. Mike, blind since birth, was born in Hartford, Connecticut. He was a six-time national placer, including 2 seconds, 2/3, and 2/4. He also won the Veterans Folk-Style Wrestling twice at 152 pounds. In all these tournaments, he was the only blind competitor. Nancy Zorich, a creative spirit whose talents have taken her to the stage and into galleries and exhibitions in several states. Her father, a commercial artist who shared his instruments with his daughter and helped her fine-tune her natural abilities, influenced her decision to follow in his footsteps. Ms. Zorich has enjoyed a fruitful career doing what she loves. Listen Saturday mornings at 12 Eastern for the Nancy and Mike Show for heartwarming stories and interesting talk on the BBM Global Network.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent, but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of the Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on the Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
Hello, everyone, and thank you again for joining me today on Soul CPR, along with my guest, Pastor Charles Eduardos. And Charles was just sharing his very personal journey from justice to Jesus. And right now, so Charles, 6 operations after being shot in the mouth and surviving this, having a death experience, coming back, 6 surgeries, told you may not have your voice again, but you were starting to gain it back. Walk us out of the hospital. What happened next?
Oh, well, yeah. I have to share this with you too. My mother and her younger sister, my Aunt Jean, may they both rest in peace. They showed up the next day, and the way my mother recognized, she walked past me, she said 3 times. And then she finally recognized, because my feet were out, she recognized my feet. But she said, they never let me see any pictures of me during that period, because my mom said to me, your head was so swollen, you look like an alien. But anyway, coming out of the hospital, they flew me back to Cleveland. Again, I'm just going through this whole thing of my career is over. What am I going to do? I'm getting my voice back, but can I ever expect to get back into radio? My whole life was around radio and television at that time. And the most pain that I felt was after the operations, the healing process, as all of the parts of my head and body and everything were healing and coming back together and everything. And I just I was at a place where I just wanted to die. I'm done, you know. But again, the love and support of my mom, my younger siblings, my friends, one particular friend, that lives out west in Nevada now was, I never will forget. I was still recovering, but I was able to get out, and she went out and got tickets to a Seals and Crofts concert that was coming into Cleveland, and talked to my mom, and my mom says, "Yeah, this is great. Get him out." So she took me to the Seals and Crofts concert, and yeah, it was a slow road. Oh, and I'll tell you just real quick, my cousin, when they first took the wires out of my jaw, he says, "What do you want to do?" I said, "I want to go and have a steak."
Mm.
And,
Yeah.
and he says, "Yeah, you know you're not going to be able to handle it. Your jaw's been wired shut for 18 months." And I couldn't even finish the first bite. I tried to chew on that forever, but um, it was
Oh,
really,
goodness. You
it,
were
it was,
only in your early 20s, right?
yes, I was like 21, 22. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, because your career started so early. You had already advanced
Yeah.
throughout these markets. So at
Yes.
this point, and at this point, so you've gone through these suicidal feelings, you dealt with the grief of losing your career. Was there a time of like reckoning with anger and revenge, perhaps, towards the shooter?
Yeah. As I got my health and strength back and everything, I'm almost ashamed to admit this, but I went out, I purchased a Colt 357 Magnum, and I felt this need to get even, and I didn't really care who with.
Mm,
Um, and I, my thought was, I'm going to go down to some of these areas in Cleveland that I know were rough and everything, and I'm going to get even with somebody that's out there victimizing people and everything. So there, at the heart of it, I think I was looking for justice. I wanted what happened to me wasn't right, and I'm going to prevent it from happening to somebody else. I'm going to get rid of
right.
a dirt bag or two and make the world a better place.
Yeah.
um, and it didn't work. I would go down to some of these areas, and it would be like a ghost town, and it was almost like God protecting me from myself. Uh,
Yeah.
and
And
slowly I started to get the message.
you got started getting the message like,
Yeah.
I keep trying to do this like renegade mission here and it's not happening.
Yeah.
So what came, yeah. So what came next? Ministry or carrying a gun legally as a police officer?
Well, actually, ministry came first. This
Okay.
all happened back 71, and in 1976 was my original ordination. And um, as my family is very, very much law enforcement and military, a lot of soldiers, a lot of law enforcement personnel. My uncle Lee, rest in peace, was assistant warden at the federal penitentiary in Atlanta. He went there from there to being the warden at Terminal Island Federal Penitentiary in San Pedro, California. His son Lee was detective for LAPD and trained detectives for them. My cousin Duke down in Texas was Air Force security. Um, my dad was career Air Force Strategic Air Command. My Uncle George was Army back in World War II. So, yeah, I ended up, um, I did the ministry, but with this background, I found myself wanting to serve folks that were serving and preserving the peace. And
Mhm.
so I ended up becoming a certified law enforcement chaplain, which led me then to actually becoming a police officer, uh, being trained by the FBI as a hostage negotiator. I worked a bit undercover narcotics. So it was my approach to my original desire to clean things up a little bit took a much healthier approach.
It certainly did. Healthier, safer, legal, kept you kept you on the right side of the law fully.
Yeah.
Uh, that transition into ministry, and you had mentioned at the top of the show that your family always thought you would be the one to go into ministry, right?
Yeah.
So somehow it took this twisted turns, of events, and this different path that got you into ministry, and then you tapped into law enforcement where you have this amazing family history of serving the country, the community in some capacity, and then you blended those two. But where's the bridge between 71 and 76? How you answered that calling? You got the message that this isn't the way to do it. The streets are empty, where you're trying to seek your vigilante justice. But what was the bridge there?
That it was a process type of a thing, because again, I was just trying to put my life together and trying to make sense out of the things that happen. And I'll just pause there to say to anybody that is listening to allow some space and time. And I don't know how to put it, but just to be attentive, whatever your particular faith or your beliefs are. Um, I really encourage people to listen to that still small voice inside. I think that there's a lot to be said about our inner intuitions.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of times, I know for me, I was getting messages, but I wasn't paying attention. I wasn't really listening.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the whole thing with being shot, I think, it was necessary to get me to slow down, where I couldn't do anything but listen, if that makes
Wow.
sense at all.
Wow. Yeah. We have all these sayings, a ton of bricks fell on my head, or, I ran into a wall. We have all these things, but getting shots that's, that's pretty severe there, God. Do we have to get that extreme? But, it stopped you in your tracks. It
Yes.
turned you around. And
Yes.
at the same time, you recognize you also were protected while you had that time for stillness and to reconnect and to listen and to find that next path. Thank you for that also, for all of us, for that message, because it's beautiful and it is something. And I love that allowing space and time is something so many of us don't do. I call it floating. Allow yourself to float. Don't just keep swimming to the next thing. We'll end
Mm,
up in the wrong boat, or maybe
yeah.
maybe in the wrong alley. So
Well,
I
yeah.
don't know.
But Anne, I have people chuckle sometime because they say, "Well, what kind of a minister are you?" And I tell them, "Well, I am a Zen Luthocostal." Um, but
I'm pondering that. I'm trying to put those words together. Okay.
but just from the standpoint of just being still, allowing what is to be. Part of where we get into trouble is when we resist what is.
Mm,
It is.
yeah.
I kind of don't like the expression "it is what it is" because it's thrown around flippantly. But if you pause and think about it, that's profound. It is what it is. Allow what is to be. What can I do to maybe change or make what is a little better? Uh, that's another story. But the resistance to what is kind of crazy, really, when you think about it.
Yeah. That's that creating our own suffering, right? The pain is
Exactly.
inevitable and suffering
Exactly.
is optional.
Optional.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Optional in that suffering section. Well, you retired from law enforcement after this long career and being a chaplain again. You are now ministering to other law enforcement officers. You served in all these other extra capacities, but you retired. You became an executive coach, I believe, and that's how we met during this period of your life before becoming the full-time pastor you are now, and also still serving in so many other ways. I believe you're still a chaplain for law
Yes,
enforcement. So,
yes.
yeah, you are. And so still doing so many things, but this has all led you into a very, perhaps another new avenue of your career, because there's been so many, and even into writing a book. But it's about time for our second break. So we're going to move into that part of your fascinating life next, pastoring full time and then creating this manifesto for your congregation and now for all of us. So don't go far, folks. We'll be back with more Soul CPR.
Dr. RC will share extraordinary resources and services that promote educational success, as well as making a difference in the lives of all social workers, as well as the lives of children, adolescents, and teens of today. She will have open discussions addressing many of the issues that we face about our youth and how being employed in the uniquely skilled profession of social work for over 18 years has taught invaluable lessons through her personal experiences. She will also provide real-life facts, examples, and personal stories that will confirm that why serving as a child advocate is extremely beneficial when addressing the needs of the whole child. Listen live to Dare to Soar, Saturdays, 10 a.m. Eastern on the BBM Global Network, and tune in radio as Dr. RC will provide thought-provoking information that will empower, encourage, and strengthen students, families, and communities across our nation. You can also visit her at soarwithkatie.com. Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness, Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them, rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals. Listen to John Hawkins' My Strategy, Saturdays, 1 p.m. Eastern on the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio.
And we're back, everyone. I'm Ann Papayotti today with my guest, Charles Eduardos. And Charles, at this point, this is when in your career, you basically, after you did you taught at a university, I believe, or a college, and you've been a facilitator, you've done workshops, you've coached, you've done everything. You were served for the ICF in your local church. I mean, the resume is super long and super full of serving others in so many ways, with all your skills and talents. And then pastoring full time became what was next. But then you recognized a real conflict between Jesus and religion, and you became a little bit of a renegade minister, perhaps. So tell me your thoughts about this.
Well, there's a need for structure in things, but I guess in being somewhat of a contemplative and reading the scripture slowly and thoughtfully, it was interesting to me how some of the things that seem to be so important within the institution of the church, how they really actually go against what Jesus taught. So I don't know. I have to be true to myself and true to my beliefs. So that occasionally gets me in a bit of trouble. In my particular denomination, there's a big thing about wearing a collar and wearing vestments and all this stuff. And I just came to the point where I stopped wearing the collar. And I asked my congregation, I said, so what do these vestments that I'm wearing, what is this collar, how does this add to or enhance or help anything, And it reminded me of some of the things that we see in the gospel stories where Jesus talked about the scribes and the Pharisees and how they're coming out in all of their religious garb and love to be, oh, rabbi and rabbi, and he says it's uh, to give a clean version, it's just bovine excrement. So I just said I've got to be true to me, and I focus on have your relationship. And I use the metaphor, the analogy of my siblings. We all had the same mother, but each one of us knew our mother in our own unique way. We each had our own personal and individual relationship with our mother. And what we need to do within the confines of the church, and as a pastor, I want to help each individual in my congregation, each individual whose life I have the privilege of touching. I want to encourage them and maybe give them some guidelines on how they can begin to develop their relationship with God as they understand Him. So
Lovely. That's interesting. Yeah.
yeah.
And that helping the members of the congregation develop their individual personal relationship, that's really what led to this book. Because if I understand it right, and I read the book, thank you very much, I've read it, but now I'm going to go back and
Okay.
reread section by section, because I love how you formatted it, where there's a reflection, a section or question, and space, just like you were saying, allow space and time. I'm going to go allow myself the time to utilize the space to answer the reflections after each section. But I wanted to make sure I read the book before we met today, and I'm going to do that. This is the book, by the way. And oops, let me get it in front of the camera. There it is. Nope, I'm going the wrong way. Dan, I always do that, don't I? Anyway, there it is. It's going to be in the show. There we go. Anyway, this it's a small book, but it's a powerful book, and it really is a guide. But the title of the book is what I loved. The story behind the title of the book. Can you share that with our audience?
Yeah, well, so many organizations as well as churches have mission statements, and we tend to put those mission statements in a plaque or a poster or something on the walls and everything. But mission, that's our purpose, why we're here. And so I said to our congregation, what is our purpose? And we went through a process. And yes, I kind of influenced it to some extent, as all pastors do, because people look to you as the spiritual leader. But we settled on the whole idea in a nutshell. And a mission statement should be easy to remember and something that's, pretty easy to understand in implementation. So we came up with our mission at All Saints is to know Christ and then to make Christ known. As we come to know Him, make Him known to the rest of the world. There was a song, as a matter of fact, it was a friend of mine that wrote it. You're the only Jesus some people will ever see. And Martin Luther actually even said, be Christ to your neighbor. So knowing Christ, making Christ known, that's our mission statement. But then me being the coach and the spiritual director that I am, I said, okay, that's beautiful. How you going to do it?
Yeah.
What's the process?
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I looked at an ocean of kind of blank expressions and got the inspiration to write. This started out to just be a manual for current members and new members, something we would put in a new members packet, to help them become part of the community, and that we would all have that unity that Jesus wanted us to have, and what St. Paul talked about, the unity of the Spirit. And then my dear friend who wrote the forward in the book, Dr. Jackie Chisholm, amazing Christian woman that leads one of the largest nonprofit organizations in the state of Ohio. She just loved it and said, you need to just publish this. This needs to be a book. She said, I wish I had had something like this when I first became a Christian, So how do you just say no to something like that? And with my heart, because again, as you kind of pointed out, my whole family, I have a heart for service. My purpose in life is to help people. Not that I've got all the answers or can tell people exactly what to do. And I even tell my congregation, please ask me questions, but don't be mad if I say I don't know.
Yeah.
So that's how it all came about. And we just published this back in June. And
it's out there now. It's on the market. And speaking of Dr. Chisholm, Jacqueline, who wrote the foreword, the first paragraph, she says, I remember the day I accepted Jesus as my Lord and Savior. I was 12. However, I didn't truly develop a relationship with him until I was in my mid-30s. And she said, I'm sure you're wondering what took so long. It's simple. Accepting Christ is not the same as having a relationship with Christ. And I was like, yeah, exactly. And that was, that spoke to me brilliantly. And that's what you're doing. You're taking people out of those, okay, we were told you have to accept Christ. This is the steps to be saved for your salvation and da, 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 da. That's what I was taught in church. But that's the structure. Now, here's the message, the relationship with Christ. I find, Charles, in my practice, in my coaching practice, that a lot of people, when we're looking at life balance and whole, a common coaching tool is a life wheel, right? The wheel of life.
Yes.
And spirituality is a section, and life is, I'm not religious. And I'm like, that's a different word. That's a different meaning. Let's define it. Define that for me. And what I often hear is there was a negative experience with church at some point where they blocked this. And I know, going through divorce myself, that I had a very unfavorable experience with church where I felt oppressed by my church, and I stayed in an abusive marriage because of the structure, expectations, as I interpreted them, at least, of my church and my community. And I find I have clients now who are oppressed by their church. They're not allowed in certain, community with others because of their status with something else. And it's a struggle. So to understanding that there's a spiritual journey. So when you said Zen, and I heard the rest of that word, but the fact that take denominations out, take structures out of the Christian experience, and you're bringing people to their personal relationship with Christ within the Christian belief. And I think that's an amazing exertion, if you will, from the religious experience. When people can understand that there's a different pathway to understanding and living in Christ than through structured church. But when a church can do it, all the better. So your church must be very, very open and embracing of all.
Yeah, we are. And again, the word religion, even, and this is one of the things, and well, you're a neurolinguistic programming practitioner too. So, but the linguistics, understanding word meanings change over time. And a lot of times we'll look at a word, the etymology of religion comes from the Latin religio, which literally means to religament, reconnect. So true religion is about connecting to God, connecting to our spirituality, and connecting to each other.
Yeah, I love that. Beautiful segue. It is, believe it or not, it's already time for that third break. But when we
Okay.
come back, well, let me ask you quickly, real quick. How was
Sure.
the writing journey for you? Because we did write, together for the online magazine. We miss you, by the way, at your tango. But the writing journey for a book, how was this different, if at all? Because you really had already, like you said, created this for your congregation, but to put it in a book, was there anything different for you?
Um, in short, and it was, I kept going like, I can't believe I'm doing this, because, I think you remember how much I struggled back with your tango, because I just envisioning myself as an author, and like even now, good Lord, I'm 76 years old, and I'm writing a book for the first time. That's just wild. Of course, I'm going to live to 2068. I'll be 120. Bible promised 120 years. I told the Lord I want the full 120, but um, it was kind of a Gomer Pyle moment, where I'm like, Shazam, I'm really doing this. But I loved it, and it was. I'm kind of into it now, and I'm looking forward. I'm working on my next installment, which at this point I'm entitling it "Embracing Self-Awareness." But it's I'm seeing that, and we're ever evolving. So this is God evolving me, and this is the next evolution where some of this stuff that just falls out of my mouth all the time is being put into writing for posterity. So
Wonderful. So that the rest of us may benefit from your wisdom and experience. I love it. So, a second book, I was going to ask what's next. Second book's on the way. All right. Well, let's take our third and final break, and we will be back with more from Charles. Don't go far.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent, but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of the Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on the Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
Mike Zorich, a three-time California state champion in Greco-Roman wrestling at 114 pounds. Mike, blind since birth, was born in Hartford, Connecticut. He was a 6-time national placer, including 2 seconds, 2 thirds, and 2 fourths. He also won the Veterans Folk-Style Wrestling twice at 152 pounds. In all these tournaments, he was the only blind competitor. Nancy Zorich, a creative spirit whose talents have taken her to the stage and into galleries and exhibitions in several states. Her father, a commercial artist who shared his instruments with his daughter and helped her fine-tune her natural abilities, influenced her decision to follow in his footsteps. Ms. Zorich has enjoyed a fruitful career doing what she loves. Listen Saturday mornings at 12 Eastern for the Nancy and Mike Show for heartwarming stories and interesting talk on the BBM Global Network.
Welcome back, everyone. I am here with my friend and colleague, Charles Eduardos, and Charles' book, which was just published in June, Knowing Christ and Making Christ Known, is a guidebook. And Charles, part of this guidebook, at the end, you included your personal manifesto, and I love it. Would you be so kind as to read that aloud to our audience?
Sure. And I'm going to have to read it because I honestly don't know it by heart. But in a world overflowing with diverse perspectives, I stand resolute in my beliefs and values, clarified from my Christian roots without reliance on denominational structures, and founded in the unconditional love taught by Christ. With unwavering conviction, I declare this manifesto embodying the essence of who I am. Integrity is the foundation upon which I build my character. I uphold honesty, transparency, and authenticity as guiding principles, and I am committed to leading by example and inspiring others to do the same. I'm a beacon of empathy, weaving compassion into the fabric of my interactions, fostering understanding and unity. I advocate for justice, striving to dismantle systemic injustices that perpetuate discrimination and inequality. I believe in the inherent worth and equality of all individuals, regardless of race, gender, or background. I celebrate the beauty and richness of diversity, recognizing that our differences are the threads that weave the tapestry of a vibrant society. I fiercely defend the freedom of every individual to express their authentic self, rejecting the stifling grip of conformity. I stand in solidarity with those who are marginalized, amplifying their voices and working tirelessly to dismantle the barriers that hinder their progress. I champion social and economic justice, striving for a world where everyone has equal opportunity to thrive. Creativity is the lifeblood that fuels innovation and progress. I embrace the power of imagination, pushing boundaries and challenging the way we've always done it. I dare to dream and make those dreams a reality. I believe in empowering minds to challenge the status quo, unraveling ignorance, and to shape a brighter tomorrow. I advocate for accessibility, inclusivity, and quality education for all, for it is through knowledge and self awareness that we unlock our true potential. The earth is my sacred home, and as a steward of the environment, I am committed to protecting and preserving it. I embrace renewable practices and advocate for a harmonious coexistence with the natural world. It is my resolute, is my resolute declaration, a testament to the values I hold dear, and I invite others who share these beliefs to join with me in forging a path forward toward a world where justice, compassion, and equality prevail. Together, we shape a future that honors the worth and potential of every individual, leaving an indelible legacy for generations to come.
Beautiful. Charles, that I love that part, and thank you so much for sharing that. And what a gift that your voice was returned to you, and you're able to still share it um, each week with your congregation, with us, with others. Where can our audience get a copy of your book?
Just go to Amazon. It's available in paperback. It's also available as a Kindle version of it. Lord willing, the creek don't rise. I've been encouraged to do an audio version of it. But right now it's at least available in Kindle and paperback. And I love the fact that you brought out and noticed that whole thing of making it real, that opportunity to reflect and figure out, how am I going to take this and put it into action for me in my life?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. When we work with coaching clients, one thing that we're often trying to do is help them figure out their values and maybe a personal mission statement, how to make those, how to live them. And ladies and gentlemen, what you just heard from Charles was a man who knows who he is, what he stands for, how he's going to show up in the world. That was beautiful. So how can they connect with you? Is it LinkedIn the best way, and email we have in the show notes, I believe.
Yeah, LinkedIn. I am there on LinkedIn. I also am on Facebook, personal, and my still do my coaching practice. Victorious Living System is what I call it. That's the website. Which and that my tagline, so to speak, for that is empowering and releasing human potential through heightened self-awareness. Um, but yeah, through the website, through Facebook, I'm easy to find.
Perfect. And we have come to the end of our show. I often like to have a key takeaway. My key takeaway today, beyond the allow space and time, which I think is an amazing one, was that the healing process is painful. You mentioned that, and that's what I want people to know. A lot of people who are hurting out there know that taking that first step towards healing is important, that you still will go through some pain. That's part of the healing process, but that the other side is beautiful. It's worth it. So as we conclude this episode of Soul CPR today, ladies and gentlemen, remember that healing is not a linear journey. It is a process of profound transformation. And transformation is certainly what Charles is all about, right?
Just to
Today's
add to that, go ahead. Can I just?
Yes.
It's not what happens to you. It's what
Okay.
happens to you isn't the issue. It's how you choose to respond, and we're always at choice.
That's it. And we sometimes forget we have that. That's our superpowers, the power of choice.
Yes,
So
yes.
if today's show resonated with you, then please share it with someone else need a lifeline of their own. Subscribe, rate, and leave a review to help us reach more hearts. And you can always connect with me on social media at Skyview Coaching on Facebook, or at Ann Papayotti on all the other networks, Instagram, LinkedIn, and X. Yes, I believe that's all of them. So let me know your thoughts, your stories, the topics you'd like to explore in future episodes. And yes, and I know that you join me in thanking Charles for being here with us today and sharing, your time and your stories and your wisdom with us, Charles. Much appreciated. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. As they say in what is it, Hindu, namaste.
Namaste. It's so until next time, everyone, may you find strength in your vulnerability and courage in your journey. Thank you for listening. Breathe deeply, love openly, and live soulfully. Good day, everyone.
This has been Soul CPR with host Ann Papayotti. Breathe life back into your spirit with each episode, where she and special guests explore the relationships that hurt us and discover that healing can only begin with you. Tuesdays at 3 p.m. Eastern on the Bold Brave TV network.